Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 16 of the FAFO Academy Podcast. I am your host, Alex Gemma, and today we will be talking about an interesting topic, very interesting concept, and it's the difference between like and respect. So, what is the difference of being liked and being respected? And how are those two interconnected, related, and how are they different? And is it possible to be respected and not liked? And is it possible to be liked and not respected? Obviously, it's possible to not be either liked or respected. So let's start with this idea that most people feel that they have to make some kind of a choice or a decision between being liked or being respected. Now, this isn't necessarily a conscious decision, but people tend to think that if they are respected, that people may not like them. Or if they like them, they're not going to be as respected as they might like to be. Maybe because the other person or people feel that they're more equal in a sense. But all that's not entirely true because the people who earn respect, and you have to remember that respect is something that's earned, are actually often well liked, but they're not making a priority out of being liked over being respected. So their primary goal is to be respected. And the moment approval or being liked becomes your main objective, you actually begin to sacrifice a lot of things or the very things that actually create respect. So let me ask you, if I gave you the choice today, right now, would you rather be liked or would you rather be respected? You probably would immediately answer, well, I'd rather be both liked and respected. But that's not my question. My question is, if you had to choose, would you choose being liked or being respected? So let's look at some real world examples quickly. So a manager may avoid correcting an employee because they want to stay friends with that employee. Is that manager putting themselves in a bad predicament or bettering their position as a manager, or something in between? How about a mom or dad who doesn't discipline their kid simply because they don't want to upset the child? Now, is that setting the kid, is that setting the child up for some type of failure later on in life? How about a business owner? Could be like any of you, small business owner. How about you may be afraid to raise your prices because you don't want to piss off your customers? Is that prudent or not? How about someone who stays silent in a relationship that actually has problems simply because they want to avoid conflict. Is that healthy or not healthy for them? Every one of those decisions goes back to the same question we have been talking about. And it's, will they still like me? And many times that is simply the wrong question. The pursuit of approval often is at the expense of respect. Remember that. So we're going to talk about this difference between being liked versus being respected, and why confusing the two quietly damages not only relationships and leadership, but also your personal growth. Now, approval is a sort of a basic human need. Let's start with empathy. Humans are social creatures by design. And for thousands of years, if you were rejected from the tribe, it could mean certain death. That has been embedded and ingrained in our development and in our subconscious minds. So our brains have evolved to seek approval. And listen, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be liked. But the problem begins when approval becomes your internal decision-making compass. So there is a healthy amount of wanting to be liked. But when you let that guide you all the time, 100% of the time, that can become problematic. For example, saying okay or yes when you actually mean no, or laughing at things you actually don't think are funny, or agreeing just to avoid a conflict, or it could simply be avoiding necessary conversations. You no longer are acting from a place of conviction. You're acting from a place of fear. So there's a difference between wanting people to like you and needing people to like you. Remember that line. Now, let me ask you some questions here. Who do you respect in your life right now, or in your recent past? Was it a coach, mom, dad, a boss that you've had, a mentor? Why do you or did you respect them? Ask yourself that. Is it because they were fair and honest and consistent and competent? Probably so. I bet that whoever you respect, you don't respect because they wanted to make everyone happy. Because that is not a trait that garners respect. You don't have to agree with the people that you respect all the time, but you certainly will know where they stand. You have to remember this: people trust consistency more than charisma. That's important. Consistency over charisma. Now, we've talked about being nice and being kind and what the difference actually is and where the lines are and where they can become a bit convoluted in previous episodes. But let's bring back the idea from episode 14. Like how a nice boss avoids criticism, but a respected one will give you honest feedback so that you can improve, they can improve, the team can improve, and really everyone benefits. A nice spouse avoids difficult conversations to avoid conflict, but a respected one, a respected partner, is going to address the issues before they blow out of proportion into a snowball effect. A nice friend may tell you what you want to hear, but a respected friend will tell you what you need to hear. Being nice often avoids discomfort. Being kind requires it. So remember that temporary discomfort is simply part of the cost, part of the price of long-term respect. Now, leadership is full of unpopular decisions. Whether you're running a business or you're leading a family or doing both simultaneously. Leadership requires you to make decisions that will not always be popular, like firing an employee. I've had many experiences with this, especially in the security industry. It is and has become increasingly more difficult to get people to work, to get them to show up, especially for 12-hour shifts, even though they know initially that that is what they're signing up for. And they know the pay rate, and they know what the work entitles and what it doesn't entail. So it may sound good at first, but after they start working, they don't show up at all. They call out, they no-show, they're late, or they're just simply insubordinate. So, for example, we had a contract where our officers were required to send a picture of the job site every 15 minutes with a 2 or 3 minute grace period. Okay, and sometimes if they didn't have a connection, they could prove after the shift when they had a connection that they actually took the pictures with the time and date stamp. Okay? Or some employees were not doing that. Or some employees were sending pictures of the sky or the ground. You know, we can't exactly determine where they are. Or they were trying to manipulate the photos with the latitude and longitude coordinates. So some of these employees had to be fired. But, you know, they had to be held accountable. Okay? Sometimes you have to hold people accountable, especially if you are in a position of power and you are a management or a supervisor or you have your own company. You can't just let everything slide, because then people will see you as some sort of a pushover. And pushovers may be liked, but they're certainly not respected. How about raising prices? We talked about that before. You don't want to raise prices because you don't want to piss off your customers. But really, if you don't raise the price and your profit margin suffers, you know, you're not respecting yourself. You got to put yourself first, because you can't really make your customers happy if you're not. enforcing standards with others and employees as well. Now, this can sound business-like, enforcing standards, but it can also be related to friends or a spouse or a relationship. You have standards, and the standards need to be met. And if the standards aren't met, fuck them. You have to enforce that. And the standards need to be enforced across the board. They cannot just be enforced when you feel like it. And again, that is the line. That's the sway between like and respect. Sometimes you just have to say, you have to tell yourself, if I do this, they're going to get pissed off. Well, so be it. It has to be done. Same thing with saying no. Sometimes you just got to say no. So if every decision is filtered through the lens of, will people like me? You'll eventually lose credibility. And ironically, the people trying to be liked actually become less respected over time. Remember this. Leadership is not about making everyone happy. It's about making decisions you can defend. Now, boundaries, and we just talked about that, they create respect. Many people think boundaries actually push people away, but healthy boundaries often do the opposite. So, in a business example, knowing your value. So again, with the pricing thing, knowing your value and the value of your business and the value of your products, if you need to raise your prices due to inflation, rising costs, whatever the case may be, or a plethora of changing conditions in the economy, whatever it is, you need to change the prices, you need to raise them. That is fine because you need to know your value. That's a healthy boundary. How about in relationships? I mentioned this as well. How about refusing to be disrespected? Listen, everybody is going to have disagreements. Whether it's at work, business, personal life, everybody argues at some point in their life, and there's going to be disagreements. But you need to refuse to be disrespected. All the time, 100% of the time. You cannot allow yourself to be disrespected. That is a healthy boundary. Okay, and that will garner respect. How about with a friendship? Not allowing people to constantly take advantage of you. Again, I go back to the line my grandmother used to say, there's a fine line between a good Joe and a sucker. Don't be the sucker. And the line that former President George Bush tried to say is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Don't get fooled twice. People might not always like your boundaries, but they will usually understand them. And without boundaries, resentment grows. So remember this. Weak boundaries create strong resentment. And enforced, solid boundaries that make sense garner respect. So chasing approval is going to become exhausting. You can't do it. So let me ask you, how much energy have you spent or have you exerted in the recent past trying to manage what other people think of you, what their opinions are? Honestly, think about it for a second. Now let me tell you, the truth is you can't. No matter what you do, someone won't like you. And it's true in every aspect of life, in marriage and in business, in social media, and in leadership. When I first started my business, I've been in the entrepreneur mindset, studying it nearly 20 years, okay? And since I got into it, I always wanted to try my best to be liked. And it actually didn't click, for lack of a better term, until I had acquired the wisdom necessary to apply the knowledge I had already learned. It took life experience to snap out of that and say, hey, Alex, what the fuck are you doing? This guy's never going to like you. You're never going to be able to please this client. You're never going to be able to be friends with this guy again. Fuck him. Move the fuck on. And that's what you need to learn to do. You can't stay stuck in trying to get everyone to like you because it's fucking impossible. And I can tell you that right now. And if you haven't experienced it in life enough, it just goes in one ear and out the other. But that's super important. Freedom comes when you stop making your self-worth dependent on this universal approval concept. If your peace depends on everyone else around you liking you, then your peace will always be temporary. So what's a balance here? The balance isn't about becoming cold necessarily, because respect without empathy creates arrogance, and approval without boundaries becomes weakness. So the goal is not to choose one. The goal is to build your character that naturally earns both. And the key is naturally. You should not have to chase it. It should naturally construct itself through your behavior. People respect integrity. And remember, integrity isn't just telling the truth. That's just one part of it. Competence. And remember, there's a difference between competence and confidence. Consistency is another one. Being fair. Fairness is huge. And being humble. My mom used to tell me, sometimes you got to eat a piece of humble pie. And I never really understood what that meant. And I have an ENTJ personality, so I naturally come off as a bit harsh and abrasive, but I understand that. And I can cognizantly navigate that harsh and abrasiveness so that I can still stay humble. Because you know what? I'm going to tell you right now. You might get lucky, but you probably won't. If you walk around like your shit don't stink, life will fucking humble you. I will tell you that. Life will find you and life will cut you down. So be humble. Because ironically, when you stop chasing everyone else's approval, guess what? People often start respecting you and as a result, naturally liking you more. So respect is earned by who you are, not by how hard you try to be accepted. Now, let's bring all this together. You will never make everyone happy. And that's totally okay. You need to accept that. So the better question here is not, do they like me? But it's, did I act with integrity? Because integrity lasts longer than popularity. Remember, popularity changes with circumstances, but your character doesn't. This week, here's a challenge for you. Ask yourself, is this decision, and whatever this is, could be whatever decision you're making in the next week. Could be something small, trivial, big decision, doesn't matter. But ask yourself, is it based on my values and what I truly believe? Or is this based on a desire to be liked? Because that one question can change the way you lead, communicate, negotiate, and build relationships. So I'll leave you with this. Being liked can open doors, but being respected is what leaves them open.